Everyone knows that the crown prince of the capital's elite circle, Mick, loves me to the bone. I was the orphan he brought back from the welfare institution, from 18 to 28 years old. Under his care, Mick gave me all his favoritism. I loved the piano, so he didn't hesitate to turn down business deals worth tens of millions to accompany me abroad to study at a music conservatory. For 3 whole years, he bought all the fireworks in the city, airlifted 999 red roses, and knelt to confess his love to me at the foot of a snow-capped mountain, holding a 10-carat diamond ring, to marry me. He severed ties with the entire Lewis family, even resorting to self-harm as a threat, finally forcing the family to compromise. He held a wedding costing $1 billion, and I married into the Lewis family in grand style, becoming the princess everyone envied. Yet this man, who once loved me so desperately, for a woman he had known for less than 3 months, publicly stripped me naked and made me kneel under the scorching sun, just because he thought I was consumed by jealousy and secretly sent someone to threaten his little lover. That's why his precious darling ran away from home. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. Strip her naked and throw her into the yard. As soon as the words left his mouth, 2 bodyguards tore off my outer clothes and threw me into the yard like a dead dog. A full hour later, his voice finally sounded again. Sarah, tell me, Regina, where exactly is she? Mick sat cross-legged in the shadows watching me. His gaze was icy cold, yet his tone carried a lingering affection, completely different from my own miserable state of sweating profusely under the scorching sun. I pressed my parched lips together, tightly wrapping my arms around my body clad only in underwear, and weakly said, honey, I don't know what you're talking about. I've never even seen her. Mick looked at me coldly, his tone still gentle. Sarah, do you know what I like most about you? It's that you're obedient. He leaned forward, lifting my chin with his index finger. Be good, don't make me angry, or else. Hearing his words, the bodyguard beside him immediately handed me a tablet that was live streaming. In the video, my mother lay on the hospital bed. The bodyguard standing by her bedside glanced at the camera on the wall, then without hesitation pulled out her breathing tube. No, my tears fell instantly. I moved on my knees to kneel before Mick, clutching his legs tightly with both hands. My mother is my only family. Please don't torment her. I've never met Regina, nor do I know where she went. Please believe me. I grew up in an orphanage. It was Mick who went through great lengths after our marriage to help me find my mother. I can't lose this family member I've only just gotten back. Mick stroked my face, his eyes gradually turning cold. Sarah, I told you, no matter what, you must never touch her. He leaned back in his chair, his index finger lightly tapping the armrest, his brow slightly furrowed, as if on the verge of anger. A person will lose consciousness in less than 10 seconds under oxygen deprivation. If the deprivation lasts for 1 to 2 minutes, the brain will suffer damage. How long do you think your mother can hold on? Hearing his words, I felt as if struck by lightning, my heart seemingly slashed open by a sharp blade, pain surging from all directions. During this time, he has been closely watching Regina's every move. Regina lacked nothing. For whatever she needed, he would provide. Even if Regina refused, he would still tirelessly present her with all kinds of precious jewelry. His favoritism towards this woman has clearly surpassed me. For so many years, I naively believed that I was irreplaceable in his heart, but at this moment, I suddenly felt ridiculous. 7 years of marriage couldn't withstand the 3 months he knew Regina. It was at a ballet performance where Regina was the lead in Swan Lake. At that time, Regina sprained her ankle before going on stage, but she endured the pain and danced through the entire performance, delivering an outstanding show. She stood drenched in sweat under the spotlight, taking her final bow, her smile as radiant and bold as a blooming flower. Mick couldn't hide the awe in his eyes as he chased after her backstage with a bouquet. Regina casually tossed his expensive roses into the trash, tilting her chin up, her eyes brimming with disdain. She said, Sorry, Mr. Hua, I don't accept gifts from married men. Please leave. It was from that moment on that Mick had a new contact in his WeChat named Rose. He always sighs in front of me, saying that roses with thorns are especially alluring. Perhaps I should have realized then that the so-called Rose was Regina. Regina lost both parents at a young age and grew up in poverty, but through her own hard work, she managed to attend dance school while working part-time. She was the school's beauty queen and had over 2 million followers online, but she didn't create an online persona, nor did she leverage her beauty and story to sell products through live streams. Instead, she continued working various jobs to save up for better private dance lessons. independent, proud, and full of vitality. She instantly captivated Mick, who had previously shown no interest in the arts. Regina's rejection only fueled Mick's desire to conquer. He pursued her with such fervor that it became the talk of the town, known to everyone. At that time, I confronted him and asked if he had changed his heart, but Mick just casually replied, "I made a bet with the guys, 5 million. Wagering on how long it would take Regina to fall in love with me. Sarah, I'm a man, it's just for fun, don't take it seriously, you'll always be the one I love most." Whether it was true or not, I couldn't accept it. I persisted relentlessly, demanding that he end this bet, but Mick just gently caressed my face, his eyes as cold as winter ice. "Sarah, don't make a scene, I promise you, your Mrs. Lewis position is unshakable, as long as you don't anger me, okay?" As the Lewis family's sole heir, Mick was young, handsome, and wealthy beyond measure. He had the means to play. After marrying me, he has always kept himself clean. Unlike his group of friends, he has never been involved in any scandalous news. I started to wonder if my possessiveness was too strong, driving Mick to seek excitement through an affair. So I kept lying to myself, believing that once he had his fill of fun, he would settle down. And we would eventually return to how we were at the beginning. But now, just because Regina blocked him and disappeared without a word, he couldn't wait to confront me and even acted so recklessly toward my mother. Mingming Regina called me to arrange a meeting before she disappeared. I know, this is her way of provoking me, but I have no evidence. Mick wouldn't believe me either. "Sarah, how much longer are you going to drag this out?" Mick's large hand gripped my neck. "Your mother doesn't have much time left." His hand was incredibly warm, yet to me it felt like the icy chill of midwinter, sending uncontrollable shivers through my entire body. Watching my mother's face turn increasingly pale and blue in the video, I finally closed my eyes and burst into desperate sobs. I told her to get out, to stop interfering in our marriage. It was all my doing. This wasn't the truth, but to save my mother. I had no choice but to lie to Mick. Watching him reveal an expression that said I knew it, my emotions completely collapsed, and my body slowly slid down until I fell to the ground. Mick looked at my disheveled state without a trace of pity in his eyes. His hand slid down and gently pressed on my shoulder. "Sarah, don't act spoiled from now on. How long your mother lives depends entirely on your behavior." I bit my lip and nodded, my eyes gradually growing hollow. As if my heart were being sliced apart piece by a sharp blade, the pain instantly spreading throughout my body. The bodyguard pulled me up from the ground, but my unsteady body was as light as a feather. Losing my balance, I fell straight back to the floor. Mick didn't look at me. As another bodyguard entered from outside and informed him that Regina had been found, she went on a trip to relax and was currently feeding reindeer under the snow-capped mountains. Mick's eyes lit up, and he immediately stood up, ready to go find Regina. The bodyguard glanced at me and said somewhat awkwardly, "Mr. Mick, Miss Regina mentioned that the madam dislikes her, which is why she was driven away. For the sake of your relationship with the madam, please refrain from disturbing her in the future." Mick seemed not to hear and immediately had his bodyguard buy a plane ticket, preparing to head to the snowy mountains to find Regina, with a pale face. I clutched my stomach and called out to him with trembling lips, "Mick, my stomach hurts so much." I reached out to grab his pant leg, but he pulled away without hesitation and walked out of the villa without looking back. "Mick, I'm pregnant." My consciousness gradually faded, and I finally passed out completely. Seeing the blood flowing from beneath me, the butler panicked completely and immediately called an ambulance to take me to the hospital. When I woke up groggily, I was lying on a hospital bed, surrounded by doctors and nurses. The butler was on the phone nearby, saying, "Mr. Mick, the mistress has had a miscarriage scare and is now in urgent care at the hospital. The doctor says they need you to come back and sign the papers." From the other end of the line came Mick's voice. Though faint, I could still hear it. "She's pregnant." "Since when?" The butler tremblingly handed the phone to the doctor, who wiped cold sweat from his brow and said anxiously, "Are you Miss Sarah's family member?" "Miss Sarah is in critical condition now. The baby is already 3 months old. You need to come and sign immediately. With emergency treatment, we might be able to save the baby." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line, followed by Mick's icy voice. "I don't want this child. Just perform an abortion for her." Hearing this, the doctor was furious. "What's wrong with you? This is a life we're talking about." The butler immediately snatched back the phone and said to Mick, "Mr. Mick, this isn't appropriate. Madam, I need to prepare for boarding. Sign the agreement for me. I don't want to see this child when I return, understand?" With that, the call was decisively ended. The butler sighed deeply, He dared not disobey Mick's orders and could only summon the doctor to the office to sign the paperwork. I watched helplessly as I was wheeled into the operating room. A dose of anesthesia was administered, and I mechanically stared at the doctor's face, allowing them to insert the cold instruments into my body. A sensation of flesh being torn apart surged from my lower abdomen, though my body felt no pain. My nerves screamed and wailed frantically until, utterly exhausted, they silently closed my eyes. My child is gone. When I woke up, I had already been moved to a VIP private ward. The butler stood guard by the bed, seeing me awake. He let out a heavy sigh of relief. "Madam, this child of yours came too suddenly. Mr. Mick had no plans to have a child in these coming years. Please don't blame me. As long as you obey, Mr. Mick will let you have a child in the future." Thinking of Mick's resolute back as he left, I felt completely numb. After 7 years of marriage, I still hadn't gotten pregnant. Although Mick said he didn't mind, whenever he stared blankly at other people's children, a sense of guilt would rise in my heart. In order to have a child of our own, I secretly took hundreds of fertility injections behind Mick's back. I wanted to give him a surprise, but because of one sentence from him, even my right to have a child was taken away. If he doesn't want it, I can't have it. So when he does want it, why should I agree to have one? What's more, he forced me to have an abortion just to hurry off and comfort his mistress. I curled up little by little on the bed, clutching my abdomen tightly with both hands. It was empty now, leaving only the gnawing pain that kept reminding me there had once been a tiny life growing inside. I want to cry, but the tears won't come. My eyes ache unbearably, only to be swallowed by endless despair. "Mick, since you don't want the child, then I don't want you either. Our bond as husband and wife has completely reached its end at this moment." I opened my phone, intending to discuss the divorce with Mick. Looking at the chat interface where our conversation had stalled a month ago, I paused, then inexplicably clicked into his social media feed. In his latest post, there was Regina wearing ethnic attire, standing at the foot of a snow-capped mountain with her arms outstretched, accompanied by a pure white elk. The caption read, "At the foot of the snow mountain, I saw the most beautiful angel." A sharp pain pierced my heart, and I immediately tossed my phone aside. The next second, Mick walked into the hospital room holding Regina's hand. Regina looked aloof and coldly at me. "Mrs. Lewis, I've already left as you instructed. Why are you still angry with Mr. Mick?" Thinking that playing the victim with a miscarriage could win back a man's heart. How utterly manipulative of you. As I listened to her insults, I instinctively glanced at Mick. But at this moment, Mick was gazing tenderly at Regina, his eyes filled with admiration and indulgence. Unwilling to spare even a glance at me. Once upon a time, anyone who dared to insult me, Mrs. Lewis, Mick wouldn't hesitate to make their life a living hell. My heart suddenly ached, and my eyes couldn't help but turn red. Back then, he would also look at me with such tender affection, no matter how much work he had in his hands, unable to tear his gaze away for even a second. When other women showed interest, he would hold me and whisper tenderly in my ear, "Darling, none of these women can compare to you. You're the most beautiful fairy in this world." But now, I've become the most redundant existence. With bloodshot eyes, I glared at him. "Mick, why did you kill my child?" Hearing my words, Mick frowned. "Without my consent. Why did you get pregnant on your own? I'm human, not a machine. How could I possibly control when my uterus conceives?" I screamed at him in utter breakdown. "Mick, don't be so absurd. I've never lost my temper with him before, nor have I ever appeared so broken and disheveled." Mick was momentarily stunned. He sighed, his tone softening slightly but still carrying a hint of coldness. "Sarah, the baby is only 3 months old, just a lump of flesh, not even a person yet. Can't you be less impulsive?" In his eyes, my child was nothing more than a lump of flesh. I lowered my head, tears quickly welling up. And a self-mocking smile couldn't help but curl at the corners of my mouth. "Mick, so you really have no heart." Beside them, Regina looked slightly displeased. "Mr. Mick, I didn't come here to watch you two perform a soap opera. Since you took my body under the witness of the snow-capped mountains, you owe me an explanation." In front of Mick, she always appeared bold in love and hate, straightforward and resilient, the epitome of a classic leading lady in a soap opera, of course. That is, if it wasn't all an act. But at this moment, I was completely stunned by Regina's words. I know Mick is obsessed with her now, but I never expected Mick to be so impatient, like a desperate old bachelor who's never seen a woman before, actually doing it with her right out in the wild. Watching the two of them flirt so openly, I felt my stomach churn and turn to dry heave over the edge of the bed. "You've already lost your baby. Why are you still pretending to be pregnant, Mr. Mick? You can't seriously believe her tricks, can you? Regina pouted, glaring at me angrily. Mick patted her head and looked at me with slight reproach. Sarah, you're the one who drove Regina away, causing her to twist her ankle in the snowy mountains. You should apologize to her. I wiped the corner of my mouth, meeting Mick's gaze with indifference for the first time. To be honest, she left on her own. It has nothing to do with me. Why should I apologize? Mick's eyes darkened slightly, and his tone grew stern. Sarah, have I spoiled you too much, making you think you can do whatever you want? Clutching my aching stomach, I closed my eyes lightly and said, I told you. I didn't. Mick let out a cold laugh, snapping his fingers to summon the bodyguards at the door. Since you refuse to repent, let me help you. He waved his hand. Teach the lady some manners. Mick remained expressionless, while I suddenly felt as if plunged into an icy abyss. The bodyguards swarmed in, disregarding my weakened state, dragging me off the bed and forcing me to the ground, making me kowtow heavily twice to Regina. I bit my lip, allowing a trace of crimson to seep from the corner of my mouth without any resistance. Watching Regina's triumphant smile, I felt my dignity shatter into pieces at that moment. Regina, she's already admitted her mistake. Are you satisfied with her apology? Mick wrapped his arm around Regina's waist, his tone dripping with indulgence. Regina snorted, her proud expression tinged with reluctance. Since Mr. Mick is so sincere, I'm not an unreasonable person. However, since I've become your woman, I must be the one and only legitimate woman in your life. I absolutely refuse to be a mistress, let alone the other woman. Mick pinched her cheek and laughed. So what do you want then? Either you marry me, or we end it here and now. Choose one. Regina stood her ground with an air of indifference. Mick raised an eyebrow, his gaze sweeping over me lying on the ground like a dead dog, then said lightly, Don't worry, I won't make you a lover or a mistress. After speaking, Mick looked at me coldly. I'll have the lawyer draft the divorce agreement and send it to you. Additionally, I'll give you $1 billion in compensation. You can choose whichever Lewis family estate or villa you like. My heart felt as if it were being torn apart, and I looked at him in disbelief. The man who once would have died to marry me had suddenly changed his tune. For a woman he's known for less than 3 months, he actually wants to divorce me. So, are you satisfied with how I handled it? Mick wrapped his arm around Regina's waist, his smile full of adoration. Regina nodded, extended a finger, and hooked it around Mick's belt as they left the hospital room. At that moment, they were consumed by desire, completely disregarding my presence, watching their carefree retreating figures. I couldn't help but laugh, the laughter gradually turning hysterical until a metallic taste rose from the depths of my throat, snapping me back to reality. So, the heart can truly shatter. A mere $1 billion means nothing to Mick. Even if the Lewis family gave me half their fortune, Mick wouldn't bat an eye. But he didn't, nor would he ever do so, because to him at this moment, I'm just a plaything that can be casually discarded. It's only fair to compensate for the wasted youth after playing with a toy for so long. He's always been generous, so he's generous with his mistress too. To keep her happy, he wouldn't hesitate to divorce and let her move right in the hallway. Their conversation continued. Once the divorce is finalized, you'll be my only woman, and I'll make sure everyone envies you. Regina let out a coquettish laugh. You said it yourself. If you dare betray me, I'll disappear instantly, making sure you can never find me again. The sound of footsteps faded away, along with the couple's flirtatious banter. The next day, the lawyer arrived at the hospital with the divorce papers. Madam, Mr. Mick has already signed. He said not to take it too hard, he's just playing around. Once Regina falls in love with him, he'll dump her without hesitation and remarry you. You can even have another child together. After speaking, the lawyer took out a bank card, a car key, and a manor gate key from his briefcase. The card contains $1 billion. You can travel or go shopping. Also, this manor was just purchased by Mr. Mick. He asked you to move in as soon as possible. And during this period, please don't return to the Lewis family to disturb him. I stared blankly at the divorce agreement, the light in my eyes gradually dimming until it finally extinguished completely. He arranged everything so well. Both the new love and the old received generous rewards. But he was too arrogant. The reason I was once so humble was because I loved him. But now, this love has been strangled by his own hands. I will no longer allow him to control me. I opened the divorce agreement and signed my name without hesitation. Under the lawyer's astonished gaze, I confidently accepted the bank card and keys. Perhaps he thought I would act like the female lead in a melodramatic TV series, refusing the alimony to catch the male lead's attention again. But unfortunately, I'm not that kind of person. I want the money, and I also want the car and the house. With these, I can leave without any hesitation the Lewis family, and leave Mick behind. In the following days, I returned to the Lewis family to pack my belongings, but instead of moving them into the estate, I rented a small apartment temporarily and stored my things there. While I was busy moving, Mick was taking Regina to various grand parties. At the luxurious banquet, Regina wore neither haute couture gowns nor expensive jewelry. She simply donned a white dress paired with 39 yuan high heels bought from a night market, her youthful face free of makeup, complemented by straight, long black hair. Like a blooming lily, she stood out among the noble ladies, ethereal and unique. Mick was utterly smitten by her unconventional charm, even going so far as to kneel on one knee in public and kiss Regina's hand in a grand romantic gesture. For a time, little white dresses became all the rage in the entire social circle, with socialites applying pure desire makeup and imitating Regina's every smile and frown. Someone captured a photo of her standing under a crystal chandelier gazing out the window and posted it online. Netizens praised her as a golden canary unwilling to be caged, radiating a beauty full of vitality. Due to the previous sprain, Regina developed permanent aftereffects in her leg and could no longer perform intense dances. To help treat her injury, Mick not only spent tens of millions to airlift the most advanced medical equipment from abroad, but also leveraged the Lewis family's connections to assemble the world's top medical team for Regina's treatment. But no matter what they tried, Regina's leg could never fully recover to its original state. For this reason, Mick specially traveled to the world's highest bungee jumping spot. He leaped off, and in mid-air, he actually cut the safety rope, just to break his leg and become disabled with Regina. Of course, his leg didn't break, he just spent 2 days in the hospital and was fine. During this time, Regina stayed by his side without leaving even for a moment. Netizens affectionately dubbed their love story the romance of the century, with trending headlines repeatedly refreshing, all featuring Mick and Regina's loving deeds. Looking at the photo of the two embracing and kissing, my heart remained completely unmoved. While the two were still passionately in love, I had already recovered and been discharged from the hospital. I went to the nursing home as soon as possible to see my mother, who was still in a coma, in the 3rd year of marriage. Mick found my mother, and we shared some wonderful mother-child moments together. But my mother was hit by a car on her way to buy groceries. Mick brought in the world's top medical team. Although they saved her life, she became a vegetable, relying on medication and a ventilator to survive for the rest of her life. I know my mother is suffering greatly, but perhaps there was also selfishness in my heart, unwilling to give up the only family I had in this world. The doctor suggested euthanasia for Mom countless times, but I could never bring myself to agree. Mick also respected my decision. No matter how long the wait, no matter how much it cost, he never complained. Perhaps this is why I kept compromising for him time and again, because the love he once gave me was simply too much. I sat by the bedside, tightly holding my mother's hand, tears slowly falling. Mom, Mick doesn't want me anymore. I thought he would be my lifelong support, but I sobbed like a child, telling her everything that had happened during this time and all the pain in my heart. Mom, I want to leave this place. But Mom just lay there quietly, without any response. I reached out and stroked Mom's graying hair. But don't worry, I'll take you with me. I stayed until the afternoon before reluctantly leaving the nursing home. First, I went to the relevant department to apply for the cancellation of household registration for both Mom and myself. I had all my documents well prepared and used the expedited service. In just 1 week, I could obtain the certificate. Subsequently, I contacted the real estate agent and sold the estate directly at a 30% discount. After receiving the money, I returned to Lewis's house and hauled out a large box hidden in the basement. I almost forgot. It contained all the gifts I had given Mick during our relationship: paper-folded stars, DIY bracelets, and 999 handwritten love letters. Such trinkets now seem like nothing more than a pile of junk. I threw the items one by one into the fireplace, the blazing flames illuminating my face in a deathly silence. True sincerity is rare, yet it can change in an instant, like this fire. It can effortlessly erase all traces of our past. My eyes ached, but not a single tear would fall. Just as I turned to leave, my gaze met Mick and Regina, who had just walked in from outside. What are you doing? Lighting the fireplace in the middle of summer, Mick looked at me, his eyes filled with confusion. I sniffed, trying hard to suppress the bitterness in my heart, and said calmly, just getting rid of some trash. Mick didn't press further. Instead, he walked past me and sat on the sofa. Take off your wedding ring and give it to Regina. his gaze lowered, landing on my bare finger. He froze for a moment, his brow slightly furrowed. "Where's your wedding ring?" I had taken off the wedding ring and placed it in the bedroom drawer while packing my things. Since we were already divorced, there was no need for me to keep flaunting that wedding ring in public. I replied calmly, "It's in the bedroom, if you want it. Go get it yourself," Mick said with a displeased expression. "Sarah, don't go too far." Even though I had already decided to leave, my heart still ached uncontrollably. That was our wedding ring. Mick's proof of his lifelong love and loyalty to me. But now, he wants to give such an important thing to Regina. I clenched my fists, took a deep breath, and barely managed to squeeze out a sentence. "Fine, I'll go get it for you." The 10-carat diamond on my ring was Mick's personal find from the mines in South Africa. The diamond's cut and the ring's design were all his own creations, products of his hard work. But we're already divorced, so naturally, this ring no longer belongs to me. I went upstairs to the bedroom, and as soon as I took out the ring, I turned around to face Regina's malicious glare. She glanced around the entire bedroom, and upon seeing the haute couture gowns and designer handbags in the walk-in closet, a trace of disdain rose in her malicious gaze. I calmly handed her the ring and said, "Stop looking, all these things will be yours from now on." She burst into laughter, snatched the ring, and examined it carefully under the light. Her expression indifferent as she remarked, "You think I care about these things? How ridiculous, but I still have to give you a piece of advice. Mick has already divorced you. If you keep clinging to this place, you'll only make yourself look cheap." I turned and walked out of the room. As I brushed past her, I spoke lightly. "I just came back to pack some things. Don't worry, I'll soon disappear completely from your sight." She suddenly grabbed my hand and glared at me viciously. "Don't think playing the saintly victim will make Mick look at you twice. You're just a worn-out housewife he's tired of." I frowned as her icy voice rang out. "I'm young and beautiful. All this is what I deserve. What right do you have to fight me?" With that, she raised the ring and slammed it fiercely onto the ground. Under my astonished gaze, her entire body swiftly collapsed backward, knocking over the blue porcelain vase placed in the corner. With a loud crash, the vase shattered into pieces. Regina lay in a pool of blood, letting out a piercing scream. Hearing the noise, Mick immediately rushed upstairs. He glanced at the blood-covered Regina and, without hesitation, bent down to scoop her up into his arms. "What's going on?" Mick's voice was icy. Regina shrank in his arms like a frightened fawn, pitifully saying, "I know I'm not worthy of you." Mrs. Lewis must have felt upset, so I tried to comfort her a little, but she called me cheap, smashed the ring, and tried to push me down the stairs. I never imagined she could be so vicious. Mick didn't give me a chance to explain. He glared at me fiercely and strode straight to the living room, carrying Regina in his arms. He called a servant to tend to Regina's wounds, while I was forced to kneel on the living room floor, held down by 2 bodyguards. "Sarah, the way you look right now disgusts me." Mick toyed with the ring on his finger, his gaze coldly fixed on me. "Did I not make it clear that you're not to lay a finger on her? Are you testing my patience?" Struggling, I reached out and lightly pressed my hand against his knee, mustering the last of my strength to say, "I didn't do it. She did all this to herself." Tears welled in my eyes as I searched through my blurred vision for even the slightest hint of trust in his gaze. Anything at all would suffice. It seemed Mick had anticipated my attempt to argue, as he shifted his legs away, causing my hand to grasp at empty air. "You've been so unreasonable lately, refusing to admit your mistakes even when death is at your doorstep. Since that's the case, you can help Regina share some of her pain." I froze, then asked him with trembling voice, "Mick, why don't you believe me?" The entire villa was equipped with surveillance cameras, operating 24/7 without interruption. He could have easily pulled up the surveillance footage to prove my innocence. Yet he seemed to deliberately forget about it, firmly pinning the blame on me. I saw it with my own eyes. "How dare you still try to deny it, Sarah? I've spoiled you too much over the years. It's time to teach you a lesson." After saying this, Mick waved his hand, and the 2 bodyguards behind him immediately stepped forward toward me. Tears instantly streamed down my face as my limbs trembled violently. I had no idea that Mick's favoritism toward Regina had reached such an extent. Slap, slap, slap. The next second, the crisp sound of a slap rang out. 2 burly bodyguards struck left and right, slapping my face repeatedly. Instantly, a bruise appeared on my cheek, the skin swelling up high. I clenched my teeth tightly, struggling not to let out a pitiful scream. Soon, blood began to trickle from the corner of my mouth, mixing with tears as it dripped onto the floor. I closed my eyes in agony, no longer able to bear Mick's indifferent gaze. The living room was eerily quiet. With only the sound of slaps echoing one after another, I knew that Mick was waiting for me to beg for mercy, but this time, I stubbornly refused to yield. In a daze, I recalled what happened back then. Grandpa Lou disapproved of Mick marrying me, so he knelt in the heavy rain for 3 days and nights, enduring the relentless strikes of Grandpa Lou's cane on his back. Mick was beaten to the brink of death, even coughing up blood, yet he still refused to compromise. After being rushed to the hospital, Mick still clung tightly to my hand, continuously calling out my name. He swore in front of everyone, saying he would love and protect me for a lifetime, that I was Mick's only wife, but now, for the sake of another woman, he has falsely accused me, even watching as the bodyguards beat me until I coughed up blood. Mick, your love is truly illusory. The next day, when I woke up, my entire face was swollen like a steamed bun. Even the slightest breath could tug at the wounds, bringing excruciating pain. Mick sat on the sofa, casually sipping whiskey. Noticing my confused gaze, he spoke lightly. Sarah, do you realize your mistake? I kept my head down, remaining silent. He frowned, stepped forward, and pinched my chin. Stop making trouble, it won't do you any good. Meeting his dangerous gaze, my heart couldn't help but skip a beat. My mother once warned me, saying Mick was a cold-blooded and heartless person. If I were to follow him for a lifetime, I would inevitably have to abandon my dignity and bow in submission. At the time, I only thought my mother was worried that, being without power or influence, I would suffer hardships marrying into a wealthy family. I didn't take my mother's words to heart because Mick had always treated me well, even excessively so, but now, I suddenly understand how my mother felt. Although I am Mick's wife, in his eyes, I seem more like an exquisite pet. A pet should be docile, obedient, submissive, and never challenge its master's dominant position. More importantly, a pet never has the right to say no. I closed my eyes and sighed deeply. It's all my fault. To make amends to Miss Regina, I'm willing to apologize to her. Enduring the excruciating pain to utter these words, blood once again began to trickle from the corner of my mouth. Mick reached out to wipe the blood from my lips, softly coaxing. Regina is performing ballet at the banquet. Go and play the piano accompaniment for her live, as a way to make up for your mistake. That very night, I attended the banquet with a swollen face, dressed in haute couture and draped in an expensive fur stole, to show his regard for me. Mick spent $3 million to bid on a diamond necklace and personally placed it around my neck. Tonight is the charity banquet, where the daughters of wealthy families and socialites are all dressed quite modestly, dripping in jewels. I attracted everyone's attention the moment I appeared. Look at her nouveau riche style, still wearing fur. She's treating the charity banquet like a runway show. That necklace around her neck must cost over $3 million. With that much money, she could buy plenty of food for children in mountainous areas. She has no compassion at all. I heard Mr. Mick dumped her. At her age, she has to dress up well, otherwise how can she win back Mr. Mick's heart? Truly a thing born of a mother but raised without one. Grabbing at any little luxury to wear, how petty. Miss Regina, on the other hand, is so refreshingly elegant, just like a college girl. I heard she donated to the children right after arriving. Such beauty and kindness. All sorts of slanderous remarks reached my ears, making my chest tighten with discomfort. I wished I could flee this suffocating scene immediately. Thinking back to the past, Mick once took me to a banquet where someone mocked my background, saying I didn't belong. Mick immediately had that person's mouth torn apart. From then on, everyone knew that I was Mick's beloved, and they'd rather offend Mick himself than cross me. People in the circle are all snobs. Now that they see me abandoned by Mick, those who once envied me, resented me, or were taught a lesson by Mick for offending me can't wait to skin me alive. At that moment, Mick appeared at the door with his arm around Regina's waist, and everyone immediately fell silent, turning their gazes toward them. Tonight, Regina was as usual, dressed in a white gown with her long hair cascading down her shoulders, her eyes sparkling with the pride and confidence of a leading lady. Suddenly I understood why Mick fell for her. Regina reminds me of my younger self. During my first few years at the Lewis household, I was also fearless like a newborn calf, radiant, unrestrained, and free-spirited, never doubting myself because of others' belittlement. I'd even pick up a glass of wine and splash it right in their face. But Mick thought I was being inconsiderate and lacking in decorum. He kept brainwashing me, trying to make me more docile and obedient. Looking back now, perhaps he simply enjoyed that taming process. Watching an ordinary girl like me being draped in the glamorous cloak of a socialite, this contrast might have seemed Mick particularly amusing. The sommelier handed Regina a glass of wine, only for her to forcefully smash it on the ground. Under the astonished gazes of the crowd, Regina declared that she despised drinking culture the most, saying that people should live freely and unconventionally. The crowd cautiously observed Mick's expression. After all, even at the peak of my favor, I had to obediently follow behind Mick toasting drinks, but the latter simply watched Regina's antics with an indulgent expression, showing no sign of anger whatsoever. I let out a self-deprecating laugh, watching the crowd fawn over Regina. Suddenly feeling exhausted, I turned and left the banquet hall, stepping onto the balcony for some air. The night breeze was chilly. After a moment of contemplation, I pulled a pack of cigarettes from my bag. I never smoke, but Mick does, so I always keep a pack in my bag, just in case he needs one. I lit the cigarette but didn't take a single puff, until the cigarette gradually burned out in the wind. I heard Mick's deep voice resonate through the banquet hall. In that case, let Sarah play a piece to liven up the atmosphere for everyone. I tossed the cigarette away and walked back to the banquet hall in my high heels. By then, Regina had already changed into a ballet costume, and I walked toward the piano under the mocking gazes of the crowd. The melodious notes flowed from my fingertips, and through the crowd, I caught sight of Lu Jingchen standing at the very back. His gaze lingered deeply on the figure dancing gracefully on stage, eyes brimming with love more radiant than diamonds. My heart has gone completely numb. Once, I loved music, loved the piano, and after graduating from the conservatory, I was determined to join an orchestra. But Mick believed that someone of my status shouldn't be making public appearances in an orchestra. My only worth is to become Mrs. Lewis, to be the caged canary he keeps by his side. I closed my eyes and poured my entire being into the performance, channeling all the emotions within me through my fingertips in a cathartic release. I had never played with such exhilarating freedom before. In that moment, it felt as though I was standing under the spotlight, without Mick, without Regina. Just an audience who genuinely appreciated my music. As the final note faded, so too did everything between Mick and me. It was truly over. Thunderous applause erupted from the audience. Of course, this applause was for Regina, not me. She excitedly bowed to the crowd in a curtain call, while in a corner unseen by others, I also performed an elegant bow. This was a posture I had practiced countless days and nights in front of the mirror, but unfortunately, I never got the chance to step onto the stage. All of this fell into Mick's eyes. He couldn't help but frown. He wasn't sure if it was his imagination, but he always felt a faint sadness surrounding me, as if I might turn into foam at any moment and scatter with the wind, scatter away. The mere thought of me leaving made his heart grow restless with irritation. Mick, did I dance beautifully? Regina dashed off the stage and threw herself into Mick's arms like a child. Mick's attention was instantly captured by her, and the gloom in his heart vanished in an instant. You were beautiful, Regina. You're the best ballet dancer. Mick stroked her head, his eyes filled with affection. But Mrs. Lewis looks so sad. In such a joyful atmosphere, she's really a downer. Regina suddenly looked at me and sneered. Mrs. Lewis, oh no, I should call you Miss Sarah. You were the one who wanted to divorce Mr. Mick. Now you're putting on this pitiful act. Are you trying to deliberately gain sympathy? Regina blinked her eyes, putting on an innocent and adorable expression. Seeing the provocation in her eyes, I simply picked up a glass of wine with a calm expression and drank it by myself. Seeing that I didn't respond, Regina's expression turned extremely unpleasant. She looked unwillingly at Mick. Mick, I don't want to see her. Mick, my hand holding the wine glass trembled. This was my pet name for Mick. He once said only I was allowed to call him that, no one else deserved to. I thought Mick would make her change her mind, but he just gave me a faint glance before extending his hand to Regina in a flattering manner, then let her get lost. Regina, may I have the honor of dancing the opening dance with you tonight? Regina's face immediately lit up with joy. Without hesitation, she accepted Mick's invitation, watching the two of them embracing on the dance floor. I forced myself to swallow the bitterness in my mouth and turned to leave. Since Mick wants me to get lost, I'll be sensible enough to disappear to a place he'll never see me again. I had just reached the doorway when a woman blocked my path. Before I could react, one of the women swiftly raised her hand and slapped me hard across the face. My head jerked to the side, my entire skull buzzing. Well, if it isn't Mrs. Lewis. Oh wait, you're not Mrs. Lewis anymore. The woman removed her mask, revealing a vicious scar at the corner of her mouth. Still remember me? Just because I once said you were a motherless bastard, Mr. Mick, had someone slit my mouth. Another woman raised her hand, showing her missing little finger. Back then, when I spilled wine on your dress, Mr. Mick ordered someone to chop off my finger, and me. just because I cursed you in an online post, Mr. Mick sent people to ruin my dad's company. Sarah, you've really done a lot of evil. My expression remained numb. All of this was Mick's doing. To retaliate against those who hurt me and to ensure I would forever depend on him. His methods were particularly insane. Now, without Mick's protection, these people naturally couldn't wait to settle scores with me. So, what do you want to do? Seeing my calm expression, the women grew even more furious. They rushed forward, hitting and tearing at me, grabbing my hair and slamming me against the wall. What do we want? I'm going to rip that pretty face of yours apart, so you can taste the suffering we've endured. Miss Regina said that as long as we kill you, she will plead for us in front of Mr. Mick. No wonder these people appeared here. It turns out all of this was orchestrated by Regina. I wanted to escape, but they held me down tightly. One of the women picked up a wine bottle and smashed it hard against my head. Blood gushed out instantly, and I staggered a few steps before collapsing to the ground. A high-heeled shoe suddenly stomped on me. I let out a painful scream as my joints were crushed under the force of high heels, the sound of bones cracking audible. They took turns rushing forward to slap me, and someone pinched my waist several times, gritting my teeth. I pushed them away with all my strength, sending the women stumbling backward and instantly overturning the entire banquet table. The loud noise immediately drew everyone's attention. Regina walked over arm in arm with Mick, and upon seeing her disheveled state, Regina couldn't help but cover her lips and laugh. Miss Sarah, what kind of act is this? A self-sacrifice ploy? Through the haze of blood, I looked at Mick. Regina hired someone to harm me. Harm you? Why would I harm you? Regina feigned surprise. Don't you know what you've done? This is all just your retribution. The other women also jumped in to turn against her. It was Sarah who paid us to crash the banquet and deliberately embarrass Miss Regina. That's right. This was all a scheme she orchestrated herself. Hearing this, the crowd's gazes toward me grew even more disdainful. I ignored them, still staring intently at Mick. Such a shoddy trick. I don't believe he can't see through it. If only he would trust me one last time. Mick remained silent, just watching me quietly, his eyes completely unreadable. As if looking at a complete stranger, my heart grew colder bit by bit, until finally all hope was lost. He kept saying it was just to win a bet, swearing he wouldn't fall in love with Regina, yet time and again, he indulged Regina in humiliating me, trampling over me. Ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. I laughed, the sound growing louder, more hysterical, until it transformed into a piercing wail, each cry blood-soaked, as if determined to drain my body of every last tear. Everyone thought I had gone mad. Mick simply watched my madness with cold indifference, even revealing a trace of bewilderment in his eyes. I had laughed my fill and cried my fill. Now completely numb, leaning against the wall to stand up, Mick didn't stop me. Just watched as I dragged my broken body, limping step by step toward the door. With each step, more blood dripped from my head, staining the pristine white carpet beneath in shocking crimson. But I didn't pause for even a moment. Instead, quickening my pace, goodbye, Mick. I arrived at the hospital, and the doctor said my injuries were severe, requiring hospitalization, but I refused. After briefly treating the wound, I immediately went to the bank to withdraw all the money from my card and deposited it into a new account. Then, I rented a private jet bound for a foreign country with 2 seats, one for me and one for my mother, to ensure my mother's health. I also bought a simple portable ventilator to keep on the plane. With everything arranged, I headed to the nursing home. I completed the discharge procedures for my mother and arranged the time with the hospital director. At exactly 8 o'clock tonight, I will come to pick up my mother. I had already asked a former teacher from the music academy to help me establish a new identity abroad and even bought a small villa. As soon as my mother and I arrive, we can start a new life. I wanted to share this good news with my mother. But as soon as I approached the ward, I saw the doorway crowded with Mick's bodyguards. What are you doing? I immediately rushed forward, only to be grabbed by the bodyguards and dragged into the ward. In the hospital room, Mick was sitting by my mother's bedside. Regina stood leisurely to the side. Miss Sarah, these people are trying to cut off your mother's oxygen supply. The nurse was being dragged by the bodyguard, struggling desperately but unable to break free. So frantic she started crying. I immediately stepped forward, pushed the bodyguard away, and shielded the frightened nurse behind me. Mr. Mick, how have I offended you this time? Hearing my address, Mick was taken aback and looked at me with some annoyance. Sarah, where have you been? I pursed my lips and after a long pause, finally uttered, just wandering around. Hearing my words, Mick sneered, you still have the mood to wander. You ruined Regina's banquet and humiliated the Lewis family. Shouldn't you be punished? With that, Mick waved his hand dismissively. Several bodyguards immediately rushed to the hospital bed and yanked the ventilator off my mother's face. No. I let out a piercing scream, lunging forward to stop them. Get away, don't touch my mom, all of you, get away. Regina suddenly grabbed me, her voice tinged with reproach. Why are you making such a fuss? Mick is just teaching you a lesson. Don't be so dramatic, okay? These people are actually joking about patients' lives. Utterly inhuman. I slapped Regina across the face, then frantically grabbed the oxygen mask, my hands trembling as I tried to put it on my mother. Regina covered her face, yelped, and fell into Mick's arms. Mick, she hit me, boo-hoo. I'm your woman, you have to stand up for me. Mick's eyes darkened. He couldn't understand how the once gentle and obedient Sarah had turned into this deranged state. He glanced at the bodyguards beside him. Are you dead? Can't even handle a woman. The bodyguards immediately rushed forward to restrain me. The oxygen mask I had just managed to put on my mother fell off in the chaos. My mother immediately began convulsing, and the heart monitor by the bed emitted a sharp alarm, watching her face gradually turn red. I was so frantic that tears streamed down my face. Mick, my mom will die, I beg you. I'll do anything you want, I screamed hoarsely, my knees hitting the ground hard. Seeing Mick remain unmoved, I started kowtowing frantically. The skin on my forehead split instantly, blood mixing with my tears as they streamed down. Mick, Mick, it's all my fault. I'm despicable, I'm vile. Just spare my mom, I'd even die for it. Mick frowned, his anger growing more intense in his eyes. Sarah, stop pretending to be pitiful, go apologize to Regina. I nodded repeatedly, crawling on my hands and knees to Regina and kowtowing. Miss Regina, I'm sorry, from now on, you'll be the only Mrs. Lewis, please forgive me. My mother will really die without the ventilator, please, I beg you. Seeing the blood and dirt on my face, Regina took a step back in disgust, pinching her nose. She said in a sickly sweet voice, Sarah, you look like a dog, so filthy. I didn't argue. Just groveled at her feet, pleading incessantly. By now, red lights were flashing in the room. If this continued, my mother would truly lose her life. Forget it, I can't be bothered to argue with you, but since you ruined my banquet, you still need to be punished. After saying this, Regina looked at Mick, seemingly seeking his opinion, then cut off her mother's oxygen supply every 10 seconds until you're satisfied. I have other matters to attend to. Regina, you can amuse yourself here. Mick stood up, straightened his coat, and walked away without looking back. In an instant, the red light in the ward went out, and the heart monitor emitted a sharp, low-pitched alarm. I turned my stiffened body around, only to find my mother's face already blue and lifeless. Seeing this, the bodyguard immediately released me. I walked to the hospital bed in a daze, burying my face in my mother's frail shoulder, silently breaking into tears. At this moment, I hated myself to the core. I hated why I had to meet Mick. I hated why I had to marry him. What rotten luck. Regina rolled her eyes and hastily left the hospital room. Holding my mother's death certificate, I took her to the crematorium. When my mother was laid to rest, there were no relatives, no friends, only me. I sat quietly in front of her tombstone, from dawn till dusk, watching the starry sky. Suddenly, I laughed. That's fine too. At least Mom won't have to suffer anymore. I stood up and strode away. When I arrived at the airport, the pilot was anxiously looking around. Geez, you're over an hour late. I thought you weren't coming. The driver looked at me and asked somewhat uncertainly, didn't you say there were 2 people? I shook my head. It's just me now. The driver scratched his head. Should we go now then? Yes, now. The plane started, but my phone rang. Looking at the word husband on the screen, I calmly pressed the answer button. Hello. There was no response from the other end. Only the sound of a man and woman panting heavily. Oh, you're amazing. Faster, even faster. Regina's voice was particularly grating. I knew she was deliberately trying to disgust me. I hung up the phone and threw it, along with the mobile, into the nearby pond. Mick, goodbye. I turned and boarded the plane. At this moment, far away in the Lewis family's villa, Mick suddenly felt a pang of unease, his mind repeatedly flashing to the image of Sarah kneeling on the ground, kowtowing. Instantly losing interest, he pushed away the deeply engrossed Regina on top of him and sat alone to the side, lighting a cigarette. Regina was taken aback by his sudden action and, somewhat displeased, snuggled into his arms. Mick, what's wrong with you? I want to go to the concert tomorrow. Will you come with me? Regina cooed, knowing full well that Mick usually couldn't resist her charms. But Mick remained unresponsive, his gaze fixed on the piano standing in the corner. He couldn't help but think of 18-year-old Sarah. Back then, Sarah was young, radiant, fearless, and had a temperament even fierier than Regina's. She sat under the spotlight, dressed in a fiery red evening gown, playing the piano. Her slender fingers danced swiftly across the keys, bringing each note to its fullest potential. When the performance ended, her skirt fluttering, she lifted her chin and walked straight toward him, throwing herself into his arms in front of everyone. Coquettishly complaining that performing was exhausting, but listening to concerts was the most delightful. Even though she grew up in an orphanage, no matter what difficulties she faced, she always confronted them with positivity, even treating hardships as challenges. Her love is wild and passionate. When she doesn't love, she can keep others at arm's length, but once her heart is set, she never looks back. Like a moth drawn to a flame, she was like a beam of light, illuminating his dim life. They met at 16, fell in love at 18, and stayed together at 22. The first half of their lives had already been tightly bound together, inseparable from one another. At this thought, Mick couldn't help but smile. "Mick, what are you smiling about?" "Honey, Just as he started, Mick froze. He turned around, only to find that it wasn't Sarah beside him, but Regina. Regina's face immediately fell. "Who are you calling? Are you still hung up on that bitch Sarah? Do you believe I'll break up with you?" In the past, he would have found this kind of Regina to be full of personality, but now, he just finds this woman noisy and a bit too pushy. After so many consecutive days of accompanying Regina, he was already starting to get bored. Soon, the wedding anniversary arrived, and Mick didn't hesitate to break up with Regina. He was busy inside and out, airlifting a truckload of roses from abroad, meticulously decorating the house, and even specially customizing an 11-carat diamond ring. He planned to take this opportunity to reconcile with me. He called me several times, but no one answered. Mick grew somewhat impatient and sent me a few more messages, still angry. "Come back soon. I'll apologize to you. Today is our anniversary. You haven't forgotten, right, baby?" "Sarah, don't go too far. If you keep this up, I'm going to get angry." "All right, be good. Don't you like children? How about we have one?" "No, let's have twins. A boy and a girl. How about that?" All the messages sent out sank without a trace. Mick gradually lost patience, and a sense of unease kept enveloping him. Facing his calls, I always answered instantly, and messages were replied to immediately. But today he discovered that apart from phone calls and messages, he actually had no other connection with me. Until midnight, Mick finally realized something was wrong. He immediately called his assistant and asked coldly, "Where is my wife?" The assistant answered tremblingly, "Mr. Mick, I just had someone check. All of Mrs. S identity information has been deregistered, and I couldn't find any exit records for her. She's disappeared." "How can a living person just vanish into thin air?" Mick sneered. "Have someone go live from the sanatorium. If she doesn't show up, cut off her mother's oxygen supply." The assistant wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and said, "Mr. Mick, Madam's mother has already been cremated." "What did you say?" Mick frowned, looking at him in disbelief. "Are you out of your mind? On the day you and Miss Regina went to the sanatorium, the Madam's mother passed away due to oxygen deprivation." "Nonsense." Mick shattered the glass violently in his grip. "Impossible. How could this be? He only meant to frighten Sarah a little. How could her mother have died?" Mick struggled to contain his emotions as he rushed into the bedroom, frantically searching through everything. The room remained exactly as I had left it, cold and desolate. All my skincare products, clothes, jewelry, and bags were still there, but only I was missing. He still refused to believe it and kicked open the study door, only to find it completely empty. He then kicked open the guest room, the bathroom, even the storage room, but there was no sign of me. Now, he was utterly panicked. Mick stood frozen for a long moment before frantically pulling out his phone and calling me like a madman. Unable to get through, he started sending messages incessantly. "Honey, I miss you. I was wrong. Honey, come back soon. I've already broken up with Regina. As long as you return, you'll still be the one and only Mrs. Lewis." "Sarah, don't go too far. There should be limits to everything." Every message sent was met with silence. Mick clutched his phone tightly, then walked dejectedly to the window, lit a cigarette, and took a deep drag. "Delete the account, stage a fake death for Mom, and disappear." "Sarah, your methods are just too childish." Mick had always been emotionally stable, but this time, he completely lost it. He smashed everything breakable in the house, then went to the office with a dark expression to handle work. In the office, the assistant tremblingly handed him a file and whispered, "Mr. Mick, Miss Regina is here, she's been waiting outside for a long time. Mick impatiently loosened his tie. Tell her to get lost. As soon as the words fell, Regina barged straight into the office. She slammed her hands on Mick's desk and shouted boldly, Mick, what gives you the right to break up with me? Do you think hiding from me will solve everything? You promised you wouldn't let me down. Believe me, if I leave now, you'll never find me again in your lifetime. Mick stared at her coldly, a dangerous glint flickering in his eyes. His voice was low and menacing. Get out. Regina was stunned for a moment, then raised her voice again. Since you can't forget that bitch Sarah, why did you come after me? Do you think I'm just some plaything for you rich people to toy with as you please? Mick suddenly stood up, gripping her throat tightly with one hand, calling her a bitch over and over. Do you really think you're something special, Regina? You only have value because I choose to lift you up. Without me, you're worse than a stray dog on the street. With that, he directly shoved the stunned Regina aside. While I still have patience, get out on your own, otherwise, I'll have someone cut out your tongue. His light tone instantly turned Regina deathly pale. To save face, she mustered her courage and spat out a threat. Mick, you're something else. This isn't over between us. You'll regret this. Regina tried to leave but was immediately seized by bodyguards rushing in from outside. Mick, what are you going to do? Regina was completely panicked. She was infatuated with Mick's handsome appearance and even more reluctant to part with the Lewis family's wealth and luxury. But only now did she seem to realize what a terrifying man she had provoked. Did you think you could leave this game whenever you wanted? Mick's hand slowly caressed her cheek, like a cold venomous snake, sending a shiver down her spine. There's a villa in the suburbs that's still vacant. You should go stay there for a couple of days first. Mick, are you putting me under house arrest? Regina struggled fiercely. How dare you treat me like this? Mick had no time to listen to her nonsense. He waved his hand, signaling the bodyguards to gag her and drag her out directly. Get rid of all those who bullied the madam. A simple sentence, yet it sent chills down the assistant's spine, making him break out in a cold sweat. How does Mr. Mick want to handle the cleanup? Mick looked at him, his eyes darkening gradually. For those who talked too much, make sure they never speak again. As for those who took action, just before he could finish, the assistant immediately nodded and said, yes, yes. I understand. Given Mick's personality, these people's fate definitely wouldn't be good. He was afraid if he kept listening, he might faint from fright. After finishing all this, Mick drove to the cemetery, staring at my mother's photo on the tombstone. He remained silent for a long time before finally uttering deeply, Mom, I'm sorry. A gust of wind blew by. Mick actually felt a slight chill. He took out his phone and tried dialing that familiar number once again. But all that came from the other end was a mechanical female voice. Sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service. Sarah, do you really not want me anymore? No, you can't. Mick tightened his grip on the phone. All of this is Regina's fault. He will make Regina pay the price in the most brutal way. In the evening, Mick arrived at the villa in the suburbs. At this moment, Regina was sitting on the sofa in a spaghetti-strap nightgown, playing with her phone, when she saw Mick. A flicker of fear flashed in her eyes, but the next second, she straightened her back, turned her head away, and coquettishly said, What, now you know regret? Since you've taken the initiative to admit your mistake, I'll forgive you this time, but if there's a next time, I won't want you anymore. Mick walked slowly up to her. Just as Regina reached out to hug him, Mick slapped her to the ground. Regina, have I spoiled you too much, making you think you can do whatever you want, you? Regina was stunned by the slap, completely breaking from her usual demeanor, and began cursing at Mick. Mick, are you out of your mind? You're the one who wanted to divorce Sarah. You're the one who betrayed your relationship. If you have any guts, control your own urges. Taking it out on me is no way for a man to act. Mick looked at her with eyes as cold as ice, as if staring at a corpse. Do you really think I wouldn't notice the tricks you've been playing? Regina shrank back, her eyes filled with guilt. What are you talking about? I don't understand. Oh, Mick gave a command, and several bodyguards rushed in immediately. They grabbed Regina and began slapping her face repeatedly. Almost instantly, Regina's face was battered. She spat out a mouthful of blood and wailed in agony. I was wrong. Spare me. You're just a plaything I used to pass the time. Who allowed you to step over my wife? Mick lit a cigarette and casually dropped a line. Get rid of her. In the packed concert hall, as I pressed the last piano key, the audience erupted into thunderous applause. I stood up and took a bow to the audience. During my 3 years abroad, with the help of my teacher, I rediscovered my passion. Today marks my first performance since returning to my home country, and now I am a renowned musician. Backstage, the lounge was filled with flowers from fans. My eyes immediately caught the largest bouquet of 999 red roses tucked in the farthest corner, and I frowned slightly. The assistant smiled and said, "Professor Feng, that was sent by the president of the Lewis family's conglomerate. If you like it, shall I arrange it for you?" A card was clipped to the bouquet. I took it off and tossed it directly into the trash, saying indifferently, "I don't like red roses, throw them away," though puzzled. The assistant still called for staff to help move the bouquet of red roses out. I put on my coat and walked to the parking lot. Looking up, I saw Mick standing under the streetlight. He wore a black overcoat with a gray scarf around his neck, looking from afar like the male lead straight out of an idol drama, yet, he had aged significantly. Long gone was the spirited demeanor of his youth. I walked past him, ready to leave, when he suddenly reached out and grabbed the hem of my coat. "Wife." I frowned and dodged away in disgust. "Mr. Mick, please behave yourself. We're already divorced." "Honey, I was wrong." He took out his phone and handed it to me. "I've taken care of all those who bullied you." I looked at his phone, where a video was playing. In the footage, Regina was suspended mid-air, with small knives piercing her skin one after another. Her cries echoed loudly, blood soaking the carpet beneath her, until only endless despair remained in her eyes. Immediately after, wearing only a camisole nightgown, Regina was thrown into the freezer. In the sub-zero cold, she kept crying and begging for mercy, then gradually curled up and passed out. This video is indeed satisfying to watch, but for me, it's more like indifference. Darling, she has to endure this pain every day, for 3 whole years, living a life worse than death. Does it make you happy to watch? I looked at him coldly, as if he were a complete stranger. "Mr. Mick, do you think you're being deeply affectionate?" Hearing my words, he froze. "In my opinion, Regina is quite innocent. You were the one who provoked her first, yet afterward you shifted all the blame onto her. Only now do I realize that you never truly loved me. You only enjoyed the admiration in people's eyes." "No, that's not true." Mick had red-rimmed eyes. "Let's start over. I'll make it up to you. I really can't live without you." I looked at him with disgust and coldly threw out the words, "There are no second chances in this world, Mr. Mick. Please don't bother me again." Under Mick's dazed gaze, I drove away. Along the way, I took out my phone and called the police. Soon, Mick was arrested for unlawful confinement. Regina was saved, but I heard she was covered in injuries. Although she survived after emergency treatment, she ended up in a vegetative state. After being imprisoned, Mick requested to see me one last time, but I refused. If only life could be as it was at first sight. Why meet only to remain strangers? Everything from the past is over now, and my new life has only just begun.